The United Kingdom has had its deadliest day so far, with 768 new deaths today recorded. It also comes as UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson spends a second night in ICU in a London hospital after suffering from persistent coronavirus symptoms. Joining me now from the United Kingdom is editor of Spiked Online, Brendan O'Neill. Brendan, it's really tough times for you and all the people of Britain at the moment. You've got your Prime Minister. We all thought he was turning the corner, and now he's had 2 days in intensive care. It's told, isn't it, that he's not on a ventilator? How is he tonight?
Yes, we've heard that he's not on a ventilator and that he apparently does not have pneumonia and does not have a secondary infection, so far as we know. But it's a very serious situation. You know, this is the person who was leading the national fight against the virus, and now he has been laid pretty low by the virus and made quite ill. Only the very serious cases go to ICUs. So it's very worrying. I think people feel disorientated. Our death rate is quite high at the moment. The virus is having a pretty scary impact on the country, and now a very popular Prime Minister has been incapacitated by it. So it has hit the country for six.
Do you think Downing Street handled the communication of how serious it was for Boris Johnson appropriately?
I'm a bit torn on that. I think they're coming in for some unfair criticism at the moment. I think, of course, it is perfectly legitimate to criticise political authorities, even during a crisis, or perhaps especially during a crisis. But the one side of me thinks that they are dealing with something which is unpredictable, very changeable, and which our country has not faced in modern times. So I have a bit of sympathy for how they're trying to manage this situation. I think in relation to Boris's condition, we do need transparency. People do need to know what's going on. I'm a full supporter of, medical confidentiality and patient confidentiality, but this is the Prime Minister. People are deeply concerned and they want to know who's leading the country. So I do think Downing Street needs to be very open about how Boris is doing, who's running the country, and what the chain of command is right now.
Yeah, OK, that's been a very interesting debate. I'm watching it and reading everything I can from afar. And of course, there is not a sort of a clear, known acting or succession arrangements that there might be. Well, they're very clear in the United States. And here in Australia, we would have the Deputy Prime Minister, if it's the coalition side of politics, step in until such time as the Liberal Party room met to elect a new leader if the Prime Minister was to formally stand aside. In this case, that's not happened in Britain. But you don't have generally, do you, a Deputy Prime Minister, and you have a different system. Where have you landed in terms of who's running the United Kingdom, who's running your COVID response, and also how Cabinet's working in his absence?
Well, at the moment, it's been deputised to the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab. So he is carrying out Boris Johnson's commands and orders and advice, so far as we know. But Dominic Raab can't make any big decisions or any decisions that impact on the nation without consulting Cabinet and without having Cabinet's agreement. Lots of the Cabinet, including Michael Gove, are currently isolating because they either have symptoms or a family member has symptoms. So they're organising through Zoom, Skype, various other online devices. So it's all a bit confusing, but we do know that Raab has been deputised to run the country in Boris Johnson's absence. We do know that if anything were to happen to Raab, those responsibilities would pass to Rishi Sunak, who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So there is a chain. But I do think Boris Johnson is a leader in an old-fashioned sense, and people did look to him for leadership. And so I think a lot of people are concerned by his absence, and that's why they're raising questions about who's now in charge.
And look, just quickly, we're having the same sort of economic debate here in Australia that you are in Britain. You are paying workers 80% of wages. We're not paying anything like that in Australia. It's a flat fee, but nonetheless there is support because government is responsible for shutting down the economy. Have you started the conversation in earnest about when you come out of this, and what is the sort of success point that you say you must restart things?
Yeah, that conversation is starting, and I think it needs to really step up a bit because the economic shutdown and the lockdown of society could also have very grave consequences. The Financial Times is reporting today that this could lead to one of the largest economic contractions in this country since 1900, just short of being as bad as the Great Depression, if we go much further with this economic shutdown. So this is incredibly serious, and we have to be careful that in fighting the virus, we don't create a new health crisis, because of course, an economic shutdown, especially for a long period of time, would also impact on life expectancy and people's health, because when people lose jobs and lose incomes and are stuck indoors for periods of time, they become unhealthy and life becomes a bit miserable. So that balance has to be carefully struck. We're starting to have the conversation, and I think we need to have it more openly and more honestly.
Yeah, I think the same advice could be taken here as well. Brendan O'Neill, thank you very much for your time.